There are some days when Britain feels like it has been punched in the chest, wind knocked out, gasping for clarity. Today is one of those days, because what happened in Manchester wasn't just an incident. It wasn't just another crime story tucked neatly into a newspaper column. It was an act of violence against innocence, against faith, against the very idea that you can walk through the streets of this country without being cut down for existing. On Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, a synagogue became a crime scene. Worshippers went to pray, to reflect, to fast, to ask forgiveness, to mourn their sins, and instead were met with horror. A car drove into people, a man lashed out with a blade, 4 human beings were left bleeding, their lives, sacred and ordinary, interrupted by someone who believed that rage justified butchery. And I don't care who you are, what politics you hold, what grievances you nurse. You cannot justify this. You cannot excuse this. There is no scripture, no manifesto, no half-baked ideology that makes this acceptable. Let's say it with our whole chest. Unaliving innocent people on the streets of Britain is not the answer. It will never be the answer. Those people did nothing. They weren't soldiers, they weren't policy makers, they weren't the government, they were worshippers, neighbours, community members, and the fact that someone chose them as targets is both obscene and cowardly. This is where I get blunt, because too many people are afraid to be blunt when it comes to violence in the name of identity, ideology or grievance. You don't need to be a Zionist to say stabbing worshippers in Manchester is wrong. You don't need to side with Israel, Palestine or anyone else in the geopolitical mess of the Middle East to state without apology that murdering innocent British Jews on their holiest day is barbarism. I am an atheist. I don't believe in God, in heaven, in holy law, but I believe in the right of a human being to gather with their community and worship freely. And if you think that right doesn't apply to Jews, then your morality is worth less than dust. And here's the bit that will make some uncomfortable. If you're celebrating this, you should be ashamed of yourself. If you find joy in worshippers bleeding in the street, then you have hollowed out your soul, if you ever had one. I don't care what memes you post, what hashtags you share, what justifications you conjure. You are standing on the side of nihilism and cruelty. You are a cheerleader for murder. And that, my friend, is indefensible. This attack reveals something rotten, not just in one individual, but in the climate we have allowed to fester. Anti-Semitism is rising in Britain. Hate crimes are spiking. Synagogues, mosques, temples, churches, none of them feel entirely safe anymore. We live in a country where security guards stand outside places of worship, where congregations budget for CCTV instead of community projects, where prayer feels less like a sanctuary and more like a risk. And yet still some have the audacity to downplay, to excuse, to frame this as just another clash of communities. No, this was terrorism, this was hatred incarnate, this was a dagger aimed not just at Jews but at Britain itself, because an attack on one faith's freedom is an attack on every faith's freedom. Let's also be honest about timing. Yom Kippur is not just another day. It is the Day of Atonement, the most sacred date in the Jewish calendar. Targeting a synagogue on that day was deliberate, symbolic. It was meant to terrorize, to say, your holiest moment is ours to desecrate. That is what we are up against. Not random violence, but calculated cruelty. Now, here's where satire becomes the scalpel. Let's talk about the attacker's supposed message. The message is nonsense. Worshippers in Manchester do not set foreign policy. They are not the cabinet. They are not generals. They are not on the battlefield. They were praying. And to strike them is as logical as stabbing a bus driver because you dislike the price of petrol. It makes no sense. It's not resistance. It's cowardice disguised as courage. And we need to call it out as such. We also need to talk about responsibility. The government has one job before all others, to keep its citizens safe. That means protecting synagogues, mosques, churches, temples, gurdwaras. That means ensuring that when you gather to worship, you are safer than you would be anywhere else. That means surveillance, intelligence, policing, yes. But it also means addressing the root of hate. The conspiracies, the scapegoating, the festering rhetoric that turns the other into a target because nobody wakes up one morning and spontaneously decides to ram a car into worshippers. That kind of violence is cultivated drip by poisonous narratives left unchecked. And when those narratives lead to blood on the pavement, the state cannot shrug and say lone wolf. No. Lone wolves don't come from nowhere. They come from dens of ideology, from ecosystems of hate, from echo chambers that normalize violence. Every one of those networks must be dismantled, exposed, prosecuted. Here's another bit of clarity. The right to worship must be defended like the crown jewels, because it is the crown jewel of freedom. If a society cannot protect people in their prayer, then it cannot call itself free. And if we are too timid to defend that right, then what exactly are we defending? So what do? We make this attack a turning point. We stop talking in euphemisms. We stop hiding behind soft language. We declare that an attack on a synagogue is an attack on Britain. We declare that anti-Semitism is treason to the values we claim to hold. We reinforce every place of worship with real protection, not token measures. We stand shoulder to shoulder, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Hindus, atheists, and say, not here, not in this country, not to our neighbours. And to those who think celebrating this makes them edgy or revolutionary, you are nothing but useful idiots for chaos. You are the laughingstock of decency, because revolution doesn't come from stabbing worshippers. Liberation doesn't come from murdering the innocent. That is not revolution, it is regression. You are not heroes, you are henchmen for despair, and history will remember you with contempt if it remembers you at all. Now, let me aim some fire at the media. Stop sanitizing. Stop reporting this as if it were just a disturbance. Stop using passive voice. 4 injured in incident. No. Someone stabbed them. Someone drove that car. Someone attacked a synagogue. Name the violence, name the hate. Don't erase the victims with grammar. And to politicians, don't dare use this for point scoring. Don't dare twist it into some half-hearted policy pitch. Don't dare say, lessons will be learned, and then move on. If you mean it, act. Protect every faith community. Prosecute every hate crime. Invest in de-radicalization that actually works, not the box-ticking exercises we currently fund. And if you don't mean it, resign and make way for someone who does. This is not about left or right, conservative or progressive. It is about right and wrong, full stop. And right now, wrong is stalking our streets with knives and cars, waiting for us to equivocate. We cannot equivocate. We must answer with absolute conviction. Innocent people have the right to live, to worship, to breathe, and we will defend that with everything we have. I say this again, I am an atheist. I have no holy book, no prayers, no rituals, but I would fight to the last for the right of my neighbour to bow his head in synagogue, to kneel in mosque, to kneel in church, to light a candle, to chant, to sing. Because if they are not free to worship, then none of us are free at all. And so, let us speak with flame. The attacker's knife failed. The community stands. The faith endures. The people of Britain will not be cowed by violence, no matter how it cloaks itself in grievance or ideology. This is the answer. Solidarity, clarity, unshakable will. You can spill blood on the street, but you cannot erase our refusal to yield. You can terrify for a moment, but you cannot sustain terror when the whole nation rises and says no. So here is the verdict of conscience. The victims are innocent. The attacker is guilty. And anyone cheering is morally bankrupt. That is the truth. We will not whisper it. We will not soften it. We will shout it, loud and unapologetic. Unaliving innocent people in Britain is wrong, always wrong, forever wrong. And anyone who thinks otherwise has no place in a civilized society. Not right, not left, just real.
Continue to go through some of the detail that we have here. We've got a pretty specific, detailed timeline of events that occurred this morning. It's 10 to 11 now. Police were first called at 9:31, so an hour and 20 or so minutes ago, by members of the public saying that they had seen a car being driven towards people outside of the Heaton Park Hebrew congregation and that one person had been stabbed. Now, police have told us that they have shot who they believe to be the offender. That happened at 9:38 this morning. It's not clear at this stage the condition of that person who has been shot by the police, but we do know that 4 members of the public are being attended to by the ambulance service. Paramedics were at the scene at Heaton Park Congregation Synagogue at 9:41. Members of the public had suffered injuries that were caused by both the vehicle and by the stabbing incident. That incident, which began at 9:30 this morning. Firearms officers were then deployed at 9:34. Now, the police, Greater Manchester Police, have declared a major incident and also something that is known as Plato, which refers to Operation Plato, which is a national response protocol for no-notice marauding terror attacks or firearms incidents. You can see the severity to which this situation is being taken by police, not just in Manchester, but across the country, that they have declared a national response protocol for this situation. You can see this is the latest picture that we have, the emergency response there. You can see not only the paramedics in response, but also fire service have responded to this incident as well, which began after a call from a member of the public at 9:31 to police that they had witnessed a car being driven into members of the public and people being stabbed. Firearms officers were then deployed just 3 minutes later at 9:34 as more attacks came in from members of the public. Detail here that a security guard, they say, had been attacked with a knife. This all happening outside Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue on Yom Kippur, the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar. And of course, synagogues have for many decades had to have their own private security, such as the threat to Jewish places of worship in this country. Now, by 9:37, a major incident was declared by Greater Manchester Police. And then at 9:38, just a minute later, once the firearms officers were on the scene, shots were fired by the police officers. One man shot, who they say was the offender. The paramedics that we can see here deployed pretty swiftly were there by 9:41. So 10 minutes after that first call came in to the police, the paramedics were on the scene tending to the injured. 4 people with injuries that they suffered from the vehicle incident. This began, as that witness had said to the police, with a car being driven towards people and people being stabbed. The paramedics are dealing with injuries caused by that vehicular attack, as well as by the stabbing that occurred after the vehicle attack. Now, of course, the roads have been closed and police are telling everyone to stay well away from the situation. The Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, has, of course, been speaking about this morning, saying that the threat appears to be over, while Greater Manchester Police are telling us that the offender who they suspect was involved with this has been shot, but there is a serious incident, Andy Burnham tells us. The immediate danger, though, appears to be over, but a major incident has been declared in the city, as well as a Plato, which, as I explained just a moment ago, is a operation that can be put into action by the police in the city, which brings about a national response protocol for what is described as a no-notice marauding terror attack, an MTA is described, or a firearms incident. Well, in this incident, outside the synagogue in the north of Manchester in Crumpsall on Yom Kippur of all days, certainly involved an individual driving a vehicle at members of the public and then proceeding to stab members of the public. That individual, Greater Manchester Police believe, has been shot. They believe him to be the offender. No detail of his condition. We do know that 4 members of the public have been injured, and the emergency services, the ambulance crews, are tending to them.
Everybody else, get back! If you're not involved, move back! Get away! Somebody stay with casualties! Everybody else, he has a ball! Go away!
He's got a bob on him!